Hi, this is Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking specifically about Ravnica and the difference between what's being done with casuals and alumni. All right, so just yesterday, Dungeons & Dragons announced the new actual setting. There's actually a new setting book for Dungeons & Dragons, official 5th edition setting book, and that is Ravnica. Now, they also announced Eberron, but Eberron is actually, it's all playtest material, and so, and if all that works out, they will sell that as a setting at some point, right? But really, that's Unearthed Arcana being sold. Unearthed Arcana material used to be given away for free, now it's being sold. I actually don't have any beef with that. I have no problem with that. But the reality is, more and more, the story here is not Eberron. We don't really know what's going to happen with Eberron. We know that all that has changed with Eberron is they're now selling Unearthed Arcana for money rather than you getting it for free. So Eberron, in many ways, I feel like is it's not the main story. The main story is Ravnica. Ravnica is a very big deal. Ravnica is huge. I think it's a fork. It's a fork in Dungeons & Dragons history, okay? It's a huge historical event within Dungeons & Dragons history, and there are a ton of lessons to be learned, okay? So in order to talk about it, I want to talk about casuals, and I want to talk about alumni. So let me define my terms. These are Dungeons & Dragons casuals, Dungeons & Dragons alumni. Dungeons & Dragons casuals are people who play Dungeons & Dragons, but not very seriously. They play once a month, maybe twice a month. They used to play, but now they don't play. Okay, they're just players. They have the ability to Dungeon Master, but they've never tried it. They have the desire to Dungeon Master, but they've never tried it. Right? Maybe they own every book, but they've never played. Another good grouping of D&D casuals is people who watch streams but don't play. Right? There's just tons of them. There's tons of these different shapes of casuals. Right? D&D casuals. Right? By the way, I am not a D&D casual. Right? I'm a Dungeons & Dragons alumni. All right. So let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons alumni. Dungeons & Dragons alumni. These are terms I'm using. I'm defining them. Right? For the structure of what I'm saying within this content. Right? Basically, what I'm saying here is a Dungeons & Dragons alumni is someone who has graduated and received the benefits of Dungeons & Dragons, right? And what I mean by that, right? So Dungeons & Dragons has some very, very real benefits. They're important. They're pretty huge, actually. It's a really big thing, right? And so what is it exactly, right? It's friendships. Do you have 1 or 10 friends that came directly from your play of Dungeons & Dragons? I do, right? Do you have a higher ability to read and write and math, right? And do arithmetic? I do. Do you have a higher tolerance for complexity? Do you have better social skills? Do you have better ability to plan large orchestrated sequences of events? Do you have a burgeoning interest in things of the world that you never had an interest in before, just so that you can build worlds as a dungeon master, or so you could be an alpha player, right? Do you have interest in acting techniques because you want to be able to portray non-player characters or player characters? These are Dungeons & Dragons alumni. These people are dyed-in-the-wool Dungeons & Dragons fan. They have generally played multiple editions. I think you could be a D&D alumni and have only played 5th edition. These people are people who are serious, dedicated fans, right? D&D alumni. All right, so let's talk about it. Here's what happened with Ravnica. With Ravnica, all right, so at the macro level, almost every time I'm talking, I hate when people come in and say, oh, well, it really depends on what you're talking about. Oh, and there's an exception to that. You know, there's this person that does the opposite of what you just said. All right, so let's throw all that nonsense out, all right? I am almost always talking, especially when I'm talking about Dungeons & Dragons, at the macro level. I'm talking about the big chunks, right? 5%, 50%, 95%, right? There's always an exception to what we're talking about, but I cannot stand that people fill every conversation talking about 3 people when the reality is 97% do X, right? You know, like, so I'm talking at the macro level. And at the macro level, no one asked for Ravnica. No one asked for Ravnica. No one asked for Ravnica, okay? Yes, there was some, dude on one blog somewhere saying, I'd really like an MTG back, an MTG setting for Dungeons & Dragons, right? That existed. But at the macro level, there were hundreds of thousands of requests for D&D 5th edition, and I truly believe with every bit of my soul that less than 1% of those were asking for, I doubt it even came to 0.01% asking for MTG as settings. No one asked for Ravnica. No one asked for an MTG setting for Dungeons & Dragons. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps, last year 8.6 million people played Dungeons & Dragons. It's possible that even over 1 million of them asked for distinct existing settings to be brought over into Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and at minimum, hundreds of thousands of alumni asked for Planescape, Spelljammer, Birthright, Dragonlance, Faerun as an official, right? Greyhawk, Calamar, the list goes on and on and on and on, right? Rokugan. These are all settings that people wanted to return, okay? And this was a real request. Alumni genuinely wanted this, right? And Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast said, no, we're not giving you any of Ravenloft. We're not giving you any of those, right? We are giving you Ravnica, which none of you asked for. All right, now here's the thing, right? So here's where my content differs from other content you're going to find on the net, right? Generally, this would be the point where the speaker, me, on so many other channels would go, and that's why Wizards of the Coast is going to fail, because they're ignoring their fans, right? Guess what? Wake up. Wrong, right? I follow smart, right? Malcolm Gladwell is a huge intellectual champion to me, right? And he's like, pay attention to the data, look at read the room and figure out what the real situation is. And here's the thing. Ravnica is a massive Wizards of the Coast thumbing their nose at D&D alumni. It is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant choice, and it will work, okay? Ravnica is going to bring in a ton of money to Dungeons & Dragons, and it's going to help them, right? And the reason, and from a marketing perspective, and from a money perspective, and from a health of the game perspective, it's a good move. And see, I hate that. I do not like admitting that from a business perspective, Ravnica is a brilliant strategic move. It really is. It really is, without a doubt, right? And here's what we have to learn. We have to learn, right? And that's my point is, my intellectual champion, Malcolm Gladwell, has taught me you cannot ignore the data you don't like, right? And here's the fact. This is a pure and utter fact. Wizards of the Coast can absolutely ignore D&D alumni and serve up whatever they want, right? And get this, they're not serving something for casuals, right? They're not giving casuals what casuals want. They're doing whatever they want, and casuals will take it. That's the part we need to understand. So this is the lesson to be learned from Ravnica. Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons design team does not have to serve Dungeons & Dragons alumni. They don't have to. They can do fine by making whatever they want, and casuals will take it, okay? All right, now here's the thing. To understand this, just think about a party, okay? There's a big party being thrown in your neighborhood, right? And the people holding the party, they have a nice kitchen, and there's a ton of people there at the party. Now, the people holding the party, right, let's call them the Palmers, right? So the Palmers are hosting the party, right? Now, they have a whole bunch of friends that they love, right? And those friends are important to them. And when their friends come over, the Palmers have held this party for years, right? And the Palmers have they specialize in cheesesteaks and key lime pie, okay? And when the Palmers' friends come over, they're like, "Where's the cheesesteaks and the key lime pie?" Right? Because we know you're better at making that than anything else, and we love it. It's an old standard. We love having it every year at the party, right? So here's the thing, right? The Palmers are very popular, and there's a whole bunch of new people coming to the party. That's the thing, right? And here's what happens. When a brand new person who is just wonderfully excited to be invited to the party shows up at the Palmers, one of the Palmers, right, is going to come out. The Palmers themselves, the two of them, will come out with carrot cake on a plate, and they're going to go, "Oh, hey, Sarah, thanks for coming to the Palmers party. Here's a nice piece of carrot cake, okay?" And that person's gonna be like, "Oh my goodness, thanks for inviting me to the party, and thank you for this wonderful piece of carrot cake." Carrot cake is terrible, right? It's horrible, right? It's not key lime pie or cheesesteaks, right? You know what I mean? And so that casual, that person who's just coming to the party for the first time, or maybe they came to one party before, right? They don't know that the real deal, the good stuff, is the cheesesteaks and the key lime. They're going to take whatever's given to them, and they're going to think it's good. And it's a good piece of carrot cake, right? It's a well-executed piece of carrot cake. Carrot cake is horrible, right? It's the worst, right? And so that's my point. Ravnica is carrot cake, right? But guess what? Wizards of the Coast is going to get away with it because people are coming in the door like crazy, right? And they don't know about the cheesesteak and the key lime. They're going to be fine with the carrot cake. That's what's happening. That's what's happening, right? And here's the thing. I was heart hurt over this. I was deeply, deeply upset by this Ravnica thing. They have denied Dungeons & Dragons alumni for 4 years. Dragonlance, Planescape, Spelljammer, Faerun, Birthright, all these amazing settings which everybody wants to play in, right? And by the way, converting the old books to new is not easy. It's a ridiculous statement, right? In order to do that, you need time, knowledge of the game, right? And you need flexible players. Not every Dungeon Master has even two out of three of those, right? So it is not easy to convert the old stuff. That drives me crazy. Every social media site was filled yesterday with this nonsense noise that those books already exist and you could just convert them. Like every Dungeon Master has 3 months of time. It's ridiculous, right? It's an absurd statement, right? So here's the issue, all right? It's carrot cake. And the thing is, we need to learn that, that a company, and especially Wizards of the Coast, and actually any company who wants to, if they are proceeding carefully, if they are being smart, they absolutely can ignore the desires of their most dedicated fans and still do great business, right? That's a fact. That's happening now, right? Like basically, I couldn't believe how many people, every single one of them casuals, jumping up to say, "Oh, this is fine. Wizards of the Coast is going to be fine." And the reason why is they're all okay with carrot cake. They don't know about cheesesteak and key lime pie, right? And so that's what's happening. And I really dislike seeing this. It is really painful to me to see resources spent on a book that could have been all that shine that went to Ravnica, a nonsense setting from Magic the Gathering, which has nothing but nonsense settings, right? It just drives me crazy that it really just drives me crazy that all that time and attention that could have went to a real, actual Dungeons & Dragons 7 Or even cooler, right? Give us a new setting, a brand new setting that actually is built from the ground up for Dungeons & Dragons. I would have been okay with that, right? I just don't want a rehash of... I just don't want a setting being brought over from Magic the Gathering. And the reason why I don't want it is nobody asked for it, right? If you have hundreds of thousands of people asking for this, and you're going to give that, you know, I really feel it's wrong, right? But here's the thing. It's wrong to disrespect Dungeons & Dragons alumni. But from the business perspective, it is good. And this is the part I have to acknowledge. And this hurts my heart even more than than learning about this yesterday. Mike Merle's Wizards of the Coast knows what they're doing. Hasbro knows what they're doing. They're going to make money. I really think they're going to make significant money on Ravnica. I think Ravnica could be the top-selling book of ever done. This top-selling source book for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Without exception, I think it could absolutely be the top book. I think it will be the top book, right? And the reality is, there's going to be money that flows in, and that is going to make Hasbro happy, right? And there's going to be, I think we could get 1 to 5% of all Magic the Gathering players playing Dungeons & Dragons. That's going to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even an entire new million players from this one book alone. I absolutely think this game this new book will bring 100,000 Magic the Gathering players who never played Dungeons & Dragons over to Dungeons & Dragons, without a doubt, right? From a business perspective, that's brilliant. And the other thing is, what Ravnica accomplishes, and I hate that it accomplishes this, is it brings new players, it keeps the game healthy, and it keeps the game profitable, right? There was a point where 600 people worked at TSR. I don't think even 50 people work on Dungeons & Dragons today professionally, right? And that's a wise decision. And the reason why is it's scalable. It doesn't run the company near to bankruptcy the way Gary Gygax allowed it to go in the 90s, you know, and so because when that happens, the game is threatened. The game could cease to exist, right? Dungeons & Dragons is a print medium, right? And we are so fortunate that they still print those books, and this thing hasn't been turned into a video game and forgotten as a TRPG, right? And the reality is, Wizards of the Coast is doing what they can to keep the game viable, to keep the game profitable, and Ravnica does that. Ravnica is absolutely disrespectful to Dungeons & Dragons alumni, but Dungeons & Dragons casuals will eat it up, right? And the reality is, it's going to bring in new players, and as much as I hate to say it, it was a smart, logical move, and it's a good business move from the perspective of Wizards of the Coast. I know that's a lot, and that's kind of a nuanced view, but sometimes there are nuanced topics. I really am just kind of reeling from this Ravnica decision. I really, you know, when I see that we could have had Greyhawk or Birthright or Planescape or Dragonlance or all those amazing settings, or a new setting, and now we have Ravnica. It's just, yeah. But the reality is, I love the game, and I want it to persist. And this will help Dungeons & Dragons persist for the long term. It really will. It's going to be an infusion of cash. Take care. Oh, and consider liking and subscribing. Take care.